Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 78 of the Peak of Serenity podcast. I am, as always, one of your hosts, Emallson, and joining me, we have recently sunburned Anomoly.
Hello.
Actually, I don't know if you got sunburned or not because you spent zero
No, I
hours
didn't.
on the beach.
0 hours outside. I think I'm more sunburned
Oh,
from the party
man,
on Saturday than anything else, so,
that's rough. That's rough.
no.
But we didn't have an episode last week, which means we have a lot of things that happened over the past 2 weeks to catch up on. I think we're going to talk a bit about Tazavesh today, and kind of what's going on with that, as well as maybe a little bit about our progression through Sanctum.
Of course, always. Yeah, maybe we can start there. Maybe we can see since we haven't had a chance to talk, how has progression been going for you?
It's one of those things where we decided to commit to doing heroic and main raid up until this week. So we did.
Oh,
We're doing full heroic clears during main raid, and we only raid 8 hours a week. So that eats in anywhere from a quarter to a half of our raid time.
yep.
Um, and so it feels like we're taking really long to progress things. But if you look at the numbers, we're actually not taking, aside from the eye, which was its own little shit show.
Yeah.
We're actually not taking longer to progress things in other guilds. We just literally have not spent as much time in Mythic as other guilds at this point. So we killed Remnant Friday night, and then we're
Awesome.
working on Soul Render. Fingers crossed we get that today, and then we can start on Paintsmith.
Yeah. Surrender should be, I mean, I forget what we did it, and we just got it down Thursday, and we did the same thing. So we've done full clears of heroic every week up to this week. We actually did normal, Sylvanas and KT also every week so far.
Really? For
Um,
the weapons?
for Dom sockets actually. So we
Oh,
still
okay,
have
yeah.
like a handful of people who need Dom sockets.
We
That's
finished.
the only
We're
reason.
done. Everybody in that
Oh
raid has
god.
them. They don't all
So
have
I think
gems. They don't all have gems, but they all have the items.
so for our problem I think now is not gems, it's actually the pieces, right? So
Yeah.
we have like a mage needs a cloth helm. I still need my leather chest.
We did some real dumb stuff to get people there. Like, okay, we're a pretty casual 8 hour week, 2 night weekend raid team, right?
Yeah.
We did cloth and mail stacks in LFR and normal because you can buy the BOEs and just
Yeah.
get loads of trash alts. So we queued into LFR with 12 mail characters, all of
Nice.
them with the crafted 230 helm, so that they could all try and get the helm and trade it to our one shaman that still needed it
That's hilarious. Yeah. We
and
have
didn't
not.
get it.
Oh, see, our problem was our mage actually. I felt so bad for him. He did the proactive thing of like, hey, I know we're not doing normal as a guild. I'm gonna do normal and get
Oh
it done.
no. And then you decided to do
And
normal as a guild?
then we did normal as a guild, and one of our other cloth wars, it might have been another mage or something, got the helm to drop. I think it's all Sylvanas, right? So couldn't trade it because he already had looted it. But
Yep.
then the other problem is we had a shadow priest who looted a normal helm last week, looted a heroic helm this week. I think he might have
Yeah.
got the mythic helm off one of the early mythic bosses that it comes from.
That's
So it's just
so
like,
that's just grinds my gears so much because that same thing happened to me. I got the normal, then heroic,
yeah,
then mythic blood chest off of the eye on
oh
our
yeah,
first normal heroic and mythic kills.
that's
Meanwhile,
rough.
my co-tank didn't get his blood set until last week. Actually, maybe this week's
Yeah,
heroic, but he got it before raid this week. And it
gotcha.
was just like, I would have loved to be able to trade literally any of these.
Yeah, would have been nice. But yeah, so I mean, other than that, progression's going well. Like I think this will probably be the last week that we also do any sort of heroic work. But we did
Yeah.
get we got Soul Render down. Spent about an hour on Painsmith. Painsmith is it's gonna be fun. Like I
Yeah.
understand why people like it. I also understand why it's super frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like dying and people just not living and yeah, it's a lot of personal responsibility.
Yeah.
Luckily, the actual damage that it does from a healing perspective isn't terribly high. Like it's not. I was expecting it to be much sketchier, and we got like phase one down and got probably one set of ads down, one attempt, and going like into phase two. Right, the ads. It's one of the end of the intermission.
Yeah.
Got those down. I got a little bit into P2. But the damage itself wasn't crazy.
Well, it's
I'm
got
assuming
that
it
ramping
ramps up.
dot, right?
Yeah, the ramping dot I think is what you'll end up hitting.
Yeah,
But
because that's like unheroic, 30-person heroic. Uh, phase 1 and phase 2 feel time, but then phase 3, I feel like I'm dying constantly because of
yeah,
all the incoming damage.
yeah. So we'll see how it goes. But it's been fun so far. Like people learning how to not dodge things has been awesome. Watching them just like freak out about what to do.
Yeah,
But as a monk, it's easy to just port super
yeah.
joke.
Transcendence, actual cheating.
Yeah. Yeah, so it makes it easy. But yeah, progression will be fun. We'll see if we get Painsmith down, and then based on what I've seen, the rest of the bosses are basically free. Like it's like
It's
what 30
so
total
dumb. I'm
pulls for
actually
the next
gonna
three
real
bosses.
quick. I'm gonna pull up the stats we've got so far for pull
I mean,
counts and stuff on these
I
bosses.
mean, Guardians is like a sub. It's got to be like a sub 5 pull boss at this point.
Not
Like,
quite. Okay, not quite, but you're close. Um, so if we look at these bosses, so of course billions of Terror kills, not a lot of pulls. Eye of the Jailer, noticeable step up in the amount of time it takes most people to get it. Then the Nine's a joke. Remnant, probably twice as long as the Eye. Soul Render, a little bit less time than Remnant. Painsmith, twice as long as Soul Render, easily. So Painsmith being like 115 pulls is pretty high.
yeah,
Um, and Guardian of the first ones is 8 to 15 pulls.
yeah, that's
Like,
just
and I understand this is something where obviously the guilds that are pulling the 9 are not generally like obviously everybody that's pulling the Guardian has already killed the
yeah.
9, but there's a lot more guilds that have pulled the 9 than ones that pulled the Guardian, and maybe once they reach the Guardian, the typical pull count goes up. But right
I don't
now, it's 8 to 15 pulls on the Guardian. It's so ridiculous.
I don't think it. I think if anything, this is judging like from what I've seen, particularly with like the rest of the instance right after Painsmith. Like everything gets easier with gear. Like
Yeah,
being able to push things quicker, and like this is the one tier where like you get these Dom Saga bonuses,
the
which I guess
the
we'll talk about in a
the
second.
damage scaling is so incredibly front loaded.
Yeah. But that it's not only that, but it's that the fights lend themselves to be able to leverage that. I mean, I think KT probably doesn't just because well, not that he probably doesn't. KT doesn't because of sort of the timings you need to make with things. But everything else, like if you do more
Yeah.
damage or do more healing, the fight becomes easier across the board.
So
So
the three bosses after Painsmith all have lower typical pull counts and progression time than Soul Render does, which is crazy. And then
it
there's
is
Sylvanas that only 11 kills in my data so far, and one of them is a guild that uploaded only their kill, so it's a like way outlier.
yeah.
But like in the 60 to 100 pull range is crazy. This is like possibly going to be easier than Painsmith, which is wild.
Yeah, and I think Sylvanas also a fight that just gets easier with more gear.
Yeah.
Like like when we as players get to this like get to the Sylvanas fight, it'll be I'm not gonna say a joke, but it might end up being one of the easier end bosses, right? Like not maybe not Xavius levels of easy, right?
Yeah.
But like in the realm of like of just being somewhat of a pushover. So but yeah, I'm
One of the big
excited.
things about Sylvanas was the phase 3 damage check, and without that being relevant because of our Dom sets.
Yeah. Yeah, particularly with everybody at rank 5 at that point, and to be fair, with any set you want, right? So if you need
Yeah.
more damage and maybe less healing, like healers can go the frost set or blood set, right? And add damage on top of what they're already doing. Similarly, like DPS can swap to whatever their highest DPS sets are and
Yeah.
go from there. So
Although I will mention, actually, we should get into Dom sets at this point.
yeah, we can talk about it, yeah, because there was some hot fixes with those.
There were some hot fixes with these, but there are fights like Sylvanas where, so the way that the Unholy set bonus works is that you have a chance to proc this stacking buff that gives you primary stat. It stacks up to 15 times, and when it reaches 15, it like goes boom, and you get a bajillion primary stat for like 30 seconds or so.
Hmm.
So obviously, like that's super good. It happens about every 90 seconds, which means it lines up pretty nicely for like Boomkin, um, and basically just Boomkin. There's other 3-minute classes, but that's the big one.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
importantly, you don't have any control over when that big boom happens. So if it happens in the middle of
True.
the Painsmith intermission, congratulations, you have to wait 90 seconds for the next one. Or if it
Exactly.
happens during the transition from phase 2 to phase 3 in Sylvanas, sucks to be you. You get to wait for the next one. So that's actually one thing we've been discussing is like the damage from blood might actually be better on some of these bosses due to
It's
their
more consistent.
intermissions.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, it's more consistent damage. Yeah, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, but
But oh, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say I was gonna actually read the changes if you want.
Yeah, let's go through
So
those.
so yeah, so we definitely missed this. So this is old news. This happened actually a week ago at this point. Or no, yeah, an entire week ago. So we should have talked about it last week, but we didn't. But in essence, we hit sort of a huge 180, right? So we found out randomly that Blizzard in the middle of like it was like Tuesday evening US time or
Yeah,
Tuesday afternoon US time after reset had gone through, after the servers had come back up, Blizzard sort of stealth nerfed all of, or not all of the set bonus, but particularly Unholy and some of the other sort of Dom Saga set bonuses. Um,
by
the community, of
50%.
course, yeah, but well, you guess, yeah, by a large number. The community sort of freaked out, I'll
Yeah,
say. Most notably because number one, there was no communication, which I think that was the biggest one, zero communication on
yes.
this one. But just in essence of like, oh, great, they're now doing what Blizzard normally does, which is if something's good, we nerf it instead of making the other things that it competes with better,
This is also
right?
a case though where I think making the other things better is honestly possibly worse than doing nothing at all. Because the power level of the Dom sets are so high already that they are kind of trivializing parts of the raid.
Yeah, and I think yeah, so let's get into the actual change and we can talk about
Okay, yeah.
what that might mean. But yeah, so what ended up happening is after that nerf went in, they reverted it and basically left it with, hey, we're gonna eventually make changes to these sets. Changes are coming, is sort of what they said. We didn't know what the changes were at that point, but we just considered it next reset. These nerfs go in, and we're fine. They came out with a blue post before that that essentially said, no, we're not actually nerfing everything. We're essentially buffing the blood and the frost sets to be hopefully in line with the unholy set,
Yeah.
which is a fun fact. Frost was a little out of control really early on, particularly for healers and in essence Ash and Hollow Holy Paladins. But
Mm-hmm.
inevitably they were buff. They basically ended up buffing the frost and blood sets to hopefully be in line with unholy. And that sort of went in last week.
I
So
do love so the number on the frost buff for reference is approximately 45% buff, which is just incredible that they were 45% off.
And the thing that gets me with something like this is that like it's not like this is like, hey, we needed data from a bunch of raids to
Right.
like
They could
figure
spreadsheet
out.
this one. They could spreadsheet this one.
Yeah, this is very much a like general, yeah, like we knew. I mean, I would say we knew, but like from a community perspective, we could tell the relative power of these the day they hit the servers, right?
Yeah.
And we're able to do some testing, understand how they worked once they were not as bugged, right? And yeah, to be this far off is rough. And then to make this change like 3 weeks into a tier, 4 weeks into a tier, it's just like what, like you'd expect something like this to occur like heroic week. Like that's when these type of changes
Yeah.
should be put in, right?
Yeah.
And before like before me, like for example, like if I want to swap sets at this point, I'm kind of stuck with Unholy because I've literally invested 250 or whatever it ends up being 300 embers into upgrading my Unholy set. So moving into like Frost or Blood, I mean, I can do it. Actually, to be fair, I can't go into Blood because I don't have a Blood chest. But if I wanted to go to Frost, I could. But does the like does the rank one, now I have to think about, does rank one Frost bonus compete with rank 5 Unholy bonus in terms of healing and damage? And it probably is slightly more damage, but is it worth it? Like
Yeah.
yeah, so like there's now a bunch of like other things I need to think about because Blizzard decided to make massive changes to the system 4 weeks into a tier.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um yeah. You basically hit the nail on the head. It's a really bad situation. We have one of the hunters in our guild um did Sims like before the SimC updates went in, so like they did the spell overrides to check out what set they should use, and it switched from Unholy being like miles better than Blood to Blood being like 7 DPS different than Unholy, and it was just like that was the point where we started actually looking at, okay, should we actually just tell people to run Blood? Because if it's a minor, if it's a minor DPS decrease, but literally 1,000 HPS per person,
Yeah,
healers,
it's
the
massive.
entire healing team is putting out like 80,000 HPS on a fight, right? If you just add another 15,000 HPS from 3/4 of your raid running blood, that's huge.
Right, and I mean, it basically will negate any of those like, hey, I died to like 1,000 overkill, or
Yeah,
like those situations where like literally something ticked on you and you end up falling over because a healer chose to heal one other low person versus you, right?
yeah,
Sort of eliminates those situations and those wipes. So
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I think I'm at a point where I'm like, cool, they made everything sort of at least not even, but some of the bad stuff better. But at the
yeah,
same token, it's like this seems like super late in terms of like tier balancing.
yeah.
Um, and just like
It's really unfortunate timing because basically it takes 3 weeks of Soul Embers to get to rank 4, and then
mhm,
another 3 weeks to get to rank 5. So 6 weeks into the tier, you could have a rank 5, basically.
yeah,
Um, well, these hotfixes went live during week 4 of the tier.
yeah,
So you could be rank 4 plus a bit on your first set, and then they changed it out from under you. And you can't get those soul embers back.
yeah. There's no like refunds. Yeah. So and that's
Um,
the exact situation I'm in. I've every gem is rank 5 except for one in my
yeah.
unholy set.
Which tanks generally pretty lucky on this because blood just got buffed. Although, like, I'm mad a little bit because of how good the blood set is relative to my own damage. It's just a huge chunk of my own damage that just does not actually care about my gameplay at all. It's just like a huge, huge damage boost.
Yeah.
But like we went from blood being good to blood being even better. Frost is still nowhere close. It's like 10% behind from me or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, but then at the same time, like I think Windwalker might be going Frost. Necro Windwalker might be going Frost because of all like basically Frost is really good if you have many, many, many small damage events and also like crit. So like
Yeah.
Rogue, Windwalker, Holy Paladin, there's several different classes that are going Frost now because of the 45% buffs to it.
Yeah, I mean, even from a damage perspective, like Mistweaver, like
Yeah,
we have reports of Mistweavers doing like 3K dam or 3K DPS now with the frost set,
yeah,
which is like a thousand or so more than like what we've normally seen. So like, there's a lot of damage out there in terms of like these sets, which is why it'll be interesting to see how the end of the tier plays out when you have healers that are pushing, like mediocre. We'll say not your top tier players playing a healer in a very DPS focused fashion, but you have like middle tier players doing similar damage like they would do, right?
yeah,
Essentially adding, if you have a 4 healer team, adding like another full DPS or another DPS and a half to your
yeah,
roster. It stuff's gonna fall over. So
yeah. Speaking of Mistweavers, we recruited a Mistweaver, sort of,
good.
sort
Our
of.
S tier, Wowhead. They just made them S tier. So in case you're wondering, any ranking that comes out from here on out, they will be S tier.
Is that true?
I can confirm. I can confirm. I'm gonna actually, to be fair, if we ever have to do another one, I'm gonna make a case for making them S tier. We'll see if it actually plays out. But
uh,
uh,
yeah. It turns out Mistweavers actually like got really good throughput right now, and
yeah, I mean, yeah,
the throughput. There's a lot of bosses that just have like lots of ticking damage. See also Ainsmith, Remnant, Soul Render, Sylvanas. Like
all of them, yeah, yeah,
they also do pretty okay damage if they're allowed to actually be in melee, which none of the bosses this tier actively punish, bringing lots of melee. And yeah, so we recruited somebody. Actually, they're going to be maining Windwalker, but they were previously actually one of our healers, and so they're going
Oh,
to be
nice.
playing Mistweaver as an off spec, which is neat.
Very cool. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the other nice part about it is a lot of the damage of these later bosses fits within like a 3 minute cooldown rotation.
Yeah,
So as long as you bring like a holy paladin, a disc priest, and like one other DR, like shaman, another holy paladin, whatever it ends up being, you have
yeah,
enough 3 minute cooldowns to
to just
cover.
cover everything.
Yeah, yeah. And then your fourth healer can be a throughput healer. So
Yep.
it works out. It works out. So yes, that's Dom sockets. Also awesome on the Mystery Recruit. They did also make one other change to Dom sockets if you want to get into this, which is you can no
Yeah.
longer overwrite them.
Oh my
4 weeks
god.
into the tier, you can no longer overwrite. Gee,
So
dude.
so to explain how this happens, let's say that have uh you have a gem in a domination item. You know, you've got it in your blood chest. You've got maybe a rank 3 blood gem in there or something. And you just got your final blood gem and you want to like swap things around where they are so like you don't have to swap things for Mythic Plus or whatever you're doing. So you like without thinking about it, put your new rank 1 blood gem in your socket over top of your rank 3 blood gem that's already there.
Click apply. And
Yep.
the rank 3, it just gets dropped in your bags, right? That's how that works.
No.
No.
No. It's gone forever. GMs can't help.
God. What? What a like
So
what
there's this is only one of the many ways that you could get screwed by accidentally losing your gems.
yeah.
Um there is one person in Crew Lounge that managed to lose their gem 3 times or something like that. Once from doing this, once from using the Soul Chisel with a full bag.
Oh no, I didn't realize that could happen.
Uh-huh. And then once from disconnecting while they were using the Soul Chisel.
I bet you the soul chisel with full bags is not fixed, by the way. I bet you that's still an issue.
I'm not testing it.
Yeah, neither am I. But wow. Yeah, so the change that Blizzard made, so now that you understand what used to happen, is that essentially you can no longer insert a Dom gem into a socket that is occupied. You first have to make sure it's empty,
Yeah,
and then it'll let you put gems in.
you'll get a message that says
So,
this cannot be destroyed.
yeah.
Um
So, which is
I can't believe that this went live. I can't
for
believe that this went
weeks.
live.
For weeks. I mean, imagine. So the funny thing is like it sucks for us. Like it sucks for players just in general across the board. But imagine like being in like limit or echo and like getting like looting.
Imagine being like Perfecto, and instead of just not getting your gems, you got your gems and you accidentally destroyed one.
Yeah, you destroyed one of your own holy gems. At that which point, I just like. I honestly, if I, to be fair, like not actually knowing goes on that level, but knowing me, I would have just quit the game.
Yeah,
I
I
just
mean,
would have been like, we're done.
yeah,
We're done here.
it's so
Yeah.
unbelievable that
Yeah.
I mean, the worst part about all of this, and I don't want to get too much on the tangent, but none of this needed to exist. They could have just given us tier sets.
It's true. That is true. That is true. So, but yeah, you no longer can do that, which I guess is cool. Is good. So, so cool. So a couple other sort of hotfix catch up patch stuff. So done on DOM sockets. They're better. The sets are better, and you can no longer overwrite them, which I think is good. There was some other hot fixes that went in sort of across the board, particularly in Sanctum. So they've added death gates to help you traverse better. Although I will tell you, this went live during our raid. We don't know where they go. There's
I
like
do.
one.
I do.
Oh, okay, okay. Can you help? Because I know there's one from the entrance that puts you like before the Ner'zhul Soul Render Painsmith
Yes.
splits.
So that's the first one. There's also one that takes you to the like Kel'Thuzad like ring,
Okay, we could
and
not find
then
that one.
you can go from there. There might be one up to Sylvanas' platform. So what happened is yesterday we were doing sales, and we had an AOTC like just Sylvanas sale after our regular sale. And I was like, my paladin is saved to everything except for Sylvanas. This is fine. Come to find out, I had accidentally not killed Painsmith on that paladin. So I went in and took the death gate, and it took me up to the area where Painsmith is. And I was like, oh fuck. So then somebody else came in and saved us and took the death gate, and it took them up to the Kel'Thuzad ring. They had cleared everything else, and I'm
Gotcha.
not sure if they were using the skip death gate to get up there, or if they were using the new kind of death gate to get up there. But either way, this basically means that if you, for example, are working on Sylvanas Heroic or Mythic, you no longer have to run through the entire instance that is entirely empty and has
Dude,
no trash to get back to the boss room.
that's just ugh, gross. I mean, glad they added them. It's just like again, I feel like for whatever reason, again, this just goes on that thing of like they just felt rushed getting this out. Like just this seems like
I think they
simple
are
navigation
understaffed, which we
stuff.
will get to a little bit
Yeah,
about.
we'll get that a little bit. Yeah, that's true.
About
Sure,
I
but yeah,
genuinely these are the kinds of like periphery things that like just
yeah,
they're edge
they're like the
cases. Like if
yeah,
you're just running through the raid, like if you're full clearing the raid in one go, you're never going to run into this issue. But if
Exactly.
you clear part of it and have to go back and you go, oh my god, we have to literally spend 15 minutes walking to the boss in order to turn
Right.
on the graveyard so that other people entering the instance spawn at the boss.
Just crazy. Just crazy. Speaking of other just hot fixes in SOD, they finally fixed Sylvanas if you wipe after killing her, or release after release if you die during her encounter after killing her, is that you no longer get ported to like her starting platform and then like every few seconds get ported back to that same spawn point. That would cancel everything from like hearthstones to just like running. You couldn't kill yourself because it was too quick. You couldn't like roll off the edge to try and die. Yeah. It
Yeah.
was that they fixed that, so which is good. So,
Yes.
so cool. Yeah, those are some of just the sort of Sanctum hot fixes. They did make a couple of bug fixes. I mean, nothing major in terms of classes. I think the only piece, class wise, I guess, is they fixed an issue where like monks could transcend when under certain crowd control types. So now you're no longer able to do that. So just minor things, nothing really in terms of like player power or monk power at this point. Just some, I guess, some edge cases where monks could do some weird stuff.
I want to know what that was. Like, what crowd control effects were they talking about? Is this like Terra Grew things?
I don't know. I think it was more PvP related, but
Maybe. Okay.
I could be incorrect. Um, but yeah. Speaking of the same patch note, they also increased time walking dungeon experience after nerfing it. So this is a fun bug that
Yeah.
I don't know if you got a chance to take.
I heard about it after the fact.
Gotcha. So the idea is this week is WOD time walking, and what ended up happening is that apparently, based on the way things were scaling, if you were level 50, between 50 and 60, and completed a time walking dungeon, you ended up getting like massive amounts of experience. The scaling was off. So
Yeah.
like people were saying, we were like, I had somebody in my guild went from 53 to 60 in 4 dungeons, four
Yeah.
time walking dungeons, which is just like absolutely massive.
I
So
wish I had been around to use this, honestly, because I have like 4 characters that I want to finish leveling. So,
yeah, I could have leveled my priest, which would have been nice. So they have hot fixed this. But what they did, so they hot fixed it quickly. I think the other day, right afterwards, just basically cut the experience from wide time walking to almost
yeah.
zero. But then they went back in and basically did a much more targeted sort of buff slash nerf where they fixed the scaling issue, but then also increased the experience you get from completing time walking dungeons.
Which is
So
good because they were actually for most expansions slower than doing Shadowlands dungeons, which kind of hurts the like one of the main like upsides of time walking, right? Is it's variety. You know, I can go and I
right,
can level a character instead of doing Shadowlands dungeons or doing the campaign again. I can do time walking dungeons, and especially because I'm usually tanking them, uh, that's a nice bit of variation instead of dealing with the same 4 leveling Shadowlands dungeon for 10 levels.
exactly. I think the other thing too is that this they not only did they make the fix in terms of scaling and like so they lowered it from the astronomical amounts. This is an increase across the board of 50% to all time
Yes.
walking completion. So it's not just this week will be the next way it comes up. I wanted to sort of pause here before since the final two topics don't really hit on this is that it seems like and I'm gonna be a little cynical here, but it seems like since the whole, thing that happened with Blizzard a couple weeks ago, the lawsuit, right, coming out and a
Yeah.
lot of the ill will to Blizzard as a company, they seem to be making a lot of decisions that are very like player like very much like power increasing focused to like maybe keep people happy. I don't want to read too much into it, but like the shard nerf
Yeah.
slash buff, there's like this piece. There's a couple, there's like one or two other things I think I noticed that I don't remember off the top of my head where it's just like in my mind, if this was like a year ago, to be fair, I feel like shards would have been nerfed versus buffed, right?
Yeah.
Like in that regard. And I think like something like this, they probably just would have removed the bonus, like fixed the scaling and left it as is to whatever the normal
Yeah.
amount was. So
Yep.
it seems like there's a I don't and this sort of coincides a lot of people like a lot of we'll say streamers or those type of people moving on to like Final Fantasy or not moving on, but playing a lot more Final Fantasy as their typical content, right? And a lot less WoW in that regard. So I'm like, are we seeing like this sort of like expansion, like this part of the expansion just be the like, hey, every time we have the chance, give the player something nice versus like
Yeah.
maybe something that from a design point of view we would have done, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm a little bit cynical in this area, like thinking about this, even though this is
There's
clearly a small change.
there's on that note, there are a lot of people like big WoW streamers and stuff. Like Preach obviously had his thing. It's not in our notes. I don't think we talked about it 2 weeks ago, but
We
he's no
did. I don't think
longer
we did.
doing WoW streaming.
Yeah.
Uh, Sloopbag's been streaming Final Fantasy and New World. Asmon's been streaming Final Fantasy and New World. Like a lot of the bigger people in the scene are streaming other MMOs, and for the first time in literally since WoW came out, it feels like, you know, WoW actually has to play catch up.
Yeah, there's like a community perception, I feel like. I mean, even Tally is another larger like MMO sort of streamer. He's still playing well, but he's no longer streaming it.
Yeah,
So I think, yeah, I think that's the thing is that like it seems like there's a yeah, we didn't really talk about this. Wasn't even in the notes, but I guess we can go to this a little bit. There seems to be like a community perception shift in terms of like there are maybe not better MMOs coming out, but WoW is not as great as it
yeah,
has been perceived to be, right? Like I think now people are realizing that like any MMO has its troubles, has its issues. It's not perfect.
right.
And now WoW is sort of encompassed in that group of like, hey, not perfect MMOs anymore, right?
There's also
Um,
there was for a long time a lot of the like cash in MMOs, right?
yeah.
Stuff like Wildstar I don't think falls into that category. But there were a lot of like, hey, take our IP and make an MMO out of it. You know, that kind of game.
Yeah.
And most of those sucked. And we
You
have
didn't
kind of
like Conan Exiles? You didn't like Conan Exiles?
I
Or
never
whatever
even
that
played
game
it.
was. It was bad. It was bad.
But we are kind of entering this era again where there's multiple big name MMOs. They're not just franchise tie-ins, and they genuinely bring something different from just the same old WoW stuff to the table.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. Like, so New World, which is the Amazon MMO, that's just Lord of the Rings without the title, by the way.
Yeah,
So if you remember, like Amazon was working on a Lord of the Rings MMO that was canceled, and then a couple months later, New World was announced. So it's like this is
yeah,
basically what it was originally Lord of the Rings, I'll say. But yeah, no, you're right. There's the New World one. There's Ashes of Creation, um, and there's of course the Riot MMO yet to be announced, right? Or
yeah.
well, it's officially announced,
It's
but the
announced, but
details
no,
around
we
that,
don't
yeah.
have name or anything
Yeah,
beyond that. It's
details,
just
no.
the Riot MMO, and of course,
Yeah,
there's still Final Fantasy
which is they have
exists.
their new Edge, what is it? Edgewalker or something, or
Endwalker, I think.
Endwalker, something
Yeah,
like that is coming
that
out.
comes
So,
out this fall. So like, there's a lot of other stuff going on, and one of the things that I personally would like to see come out of this period for Blizzard, beyond of course, they have their
internal
own
stuff.
devils to address internally.
Yeah.
So aside from that, one things I would like to see is for them to take a more like player friendly, like let us like not just drown us in like all the grinds, you know.
Right.
Though at the
Yeah.
same time, one of our raiders last year quit for Final Fantasy. They unfortunately had their raid team from Final Fantasy then quit on them, which was unfortunate. Um, but they were like, one of the things that WoW does, which I personally don't like, but apparently, you know, it is a upside for some people, is that it is just like there's always something to do. There's always something for you to work on. There's always
Yeah.
something for you to log on and make progress on, and like, okay, today I can log on and I can do this and that and the other. And I think really honestly, that's great. The place that the WoW team has always, I think, or struggled for a while is like there's people like me that don't want to log on every day and do all that stuff. They feel like I need to. And
Yeah.
like they gotta better straddle that line, that divide of making it feel like, yeah, it's not that important. And they actually did pretty well this year actually. Um
Yeah.
the Korthia grind is not that important.
I mean, like eventually, well, you don't even have to do it, right? Because eventually, well, I mean, even if you do it casually, like eventually you get to the point where you get sockets, right? And then you can stop, and
Yeah.
it's so that's really the only player power there. And then I mean, if sockets aren't too crazy for you, you're not trying to ultra min max. It's like not the biggest deal to not get there with it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean they did. Yeah, and I think you're always going to have, and I think yeah, the other problem with a game like WoW is you're always going to have both extremes that are
Yeah.
very vocal. So it's like in terms of like what actually makes sense for the majority of players, you're not going to see it because you're going to always get the people that are like, Korthia was so small, there wasn't anything to do, yada yada yada, and then
Yeah.
like other people are just like, oh, it's nice not having to log in and do Torghast every week, right, or whatever, with not having to do like the mall every day,
Yeah.
because I needed like a certain thing from it. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think for me, and maybe we just sort of segue real quick just into sort of the what Blizzard's doing in terms of like hiring, because I think my comment will sort of directly impact that. But so my comment is basically what I hope comes out of this more than anything is that Blizzard starts to be more fluid with their changes in terms of like trying things, right? Like the DOM
Yeah.
socket nerfs and buff like changes to the DOM socket system, I'm actually excited for, but the idea is that it's one of those things where like it happened too late, not quickly enough, and then
Yeah.
also like I expect this to be the only change they make to the system until it goes away in 6 months.
Yeah.
Right, like, so, like, they need to sort of, I think, balance that, but yeah, I think that to that point, like, Blizzard is hiring a bunch of people, and it's not I think, I think they have, like, 3 specific positions for the combat team, which are highlighted, right, but they have, I think, something like 30 or 40 open positions across the WoW team in
Yeah.
various different departments, and from what we can tell, these are generally brand new, like, these are new positions, like, these are not replacing someone who's left, it's new positions that the team needs to help support the work that they're doing, which I think to our point, and we've sort of made this before, is that I think a lot of the WoW team is short staffed in
Yeah.
terms of like just having enough people to do the work, and so hopefully this turns into, hey, having enough people to do the work so we get some like we don't have to wait 4 weeks to get death gates or ports around an instance that's massive, right?
Right.
Um and I think also my hope is that this ends up turning into like a more, hey, we get quicker changes or more iteration on things, right? Because I think from like my point of view, I am perfectly fine with them making changes to things and sort of balance tuning and stuff like that. When it where it makes sense. But I think right now WoW is on a like every patch you get your balance change and that's it.
Yeah.
And, like, I think PvP probably gets a little bit more like, we'll say love, but they get a lot more tuning, I think, in terms of that, but from, like, a PvE perspective, where I sit and the majority of my play is, it's just, like, the only time I change anything is on, like, patches, right? Whether that's a dot 1, dot 2 release or, like, an or would it be dot .0, dot 5 release, right?
Right.
So, yeah. But, I mean,
Yeah.
good on them for hiring. It's gonna
Yeah.
be tough, I feel like.
Yeah, it's between all of the lawsuit stuff, the the garbage fire that is
Yeah.
has been their company culture. Um and then just WoW is not the kind of golden darling anymore, and Blizzard historically hasn't also kept up with pay as far as like big game companies go either. So it's like this perfect storm of like I think they're gonna have a pretty hard time filling these spots.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, but I hopefully the my rose-colored glasses, as people like to say that I have on. Thank shout out to Wowhead Commenter a couple weeks ago. Um, uh, my hope is that the people that will apply are ones that actually care,
yeah,
right? That are doing it because they like the game, which I say that, and that's the exact issue we've had with everyone who currently runs this game or designs this game is that they all come from the community and they all think they know better than the community, which is whatever.
yeah,
But but yeah, I mean, well, we'll see how it turns out. But hopefully, at least in general, to stay positive, the new positions are good.
yeah. It's so not gonna lie. I kind of want to apply personally, but for one thing, I'm not really qualified to do game design on a game of this scale, and also, uh, I have other commitments IRL that mean I couldn't just drop what I'm doing and move to California, but or Texas or wherever these are. Um,
Well, Emmelson, most of their workforce is remote, and probably will be remote for the next year. Just do like this for the next year, and then quit. Be fun. Get the
just get
experience.
the job, redesign Brewmaster, and then quit. Got it.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's we're gonna be going through some interesting times in ye old World of Warcraft.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. That's for sure. So we'll see how the new blood, new folks sort of pan out in terms of design stuff and I mean, to be fair, like WoW is a very good MMO. Like I think it's got very good bones. Like
Yeah.
the structure has been great. It's been sort of at the forefront for years in terms of like what people look at as being a good MMO. And while I think it's probably stumbled over the past two expansions,
Yeah.
I mean, it's still, that's
I
what,
think
4 of its 10 years, right? Or 5 of its 10 years of
it
existence, and it's sort of
I'm curious, how many dungeons did Burning Crusade have?
dungeons.
Yeah.
Uh, Hold on. I honestly, 0 idea.
Because there's 3 in Terracar, uh 2 no 3 in Hellfire, 2 in whatever Netherstorm. And there's a bunch of zones that don't have any at all, but there's like 2 in
16.
16. Okay, that's what I thought. So obviously, game is different now than it was then, and the quality of like the trash and the bosses in those dungeons. I say quality, but I mean like depth of the designs on those
Yeah.
versus what we have now is like totally different. But looking back over the past 2 expansions, I feel like one of the ways that they have stumbled is that they have spent so much time over designing things for us, the
Yeah.
raiders. And I say over designing intentionally because these systems are complicated for no good reason. Um, and then under designing for like a more typical player that like wants to do small group content. Like Mythic Plus is nice. I don't think it's actually like I don't personally enjoy running the same dungeons over and over again, but
Yeah.
you know, that's just me. But I mean, I've been very loud about my opinion that I think that Burning Crusade Classic is like a much better game for casual players right now than retail WoW is, and for
Yeah.
multiple reasons. Like it's got a greater variety of small group content. The small group content has like a lower cap, so you can just kind of go into it and like maybe you're in a group that needs to CC a bunch of stuff, maybe you're not, and it's okay either way. And then
Mhm.
just like the better leveling experience than retail right now. But
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you that I think that the whole yeah, you're right. Like the whole like they've basically moved the focus, and maybe it's not move the focus, but sort of maybe centered or like focus the focus, if that's a way to look at it, right?
yeah,
In terms of like the max level stuff, like where previously
yeah,
there was a lot more like maybe flavor or like, hey, we're building a dungeon because we think it'd be cool to put a dungeon here, not that it has to like
right. Something
align
like
with
Marauder
story or
hasn't happened since Classic, where they added a low-level dungeon in a
yeah,
patch.
yeah.
Yeah,
Which is sort of like the gap there. And then even like the dungeons in, to your point, BC, they're sort of like Caverns of Time was there to send like to
I thought
basically
that.
talk
Yeah,
about like 3 different time zones in WoW and go through an instance with it. And they weren't hard, they weren't interesting. It was just like, cool, like we have this Caverns of Time thing. Let's do that, which they've really never gone back to since what? Cataclysm, right? That had
yeah. I
some
mean,
stuff in the Caverns of
you could
Time that
kind of make an argument that all of WoD is like that kind of timey-wimey
yeah, it's
nonsense,
true.
but
Yeah, no. We're not making that. But I mean,
but I
even
mean,
ever
like,
since
so
or sorry.
if you think about like Legion, one of the reasons that Legion was like so wildly popular is there was so much to do that wasn't rating like
Yeah.
basically wasn't like the high end stuff. And Mythic Plus is a good like bridge in between like rating and just running heroic dungeons, right?
Yeah.
But like right now, where's my artifact skins? Where's my mage tower? Where's my, you know, all the other like we still have the stuff like transmog runs and mounts and all of that stuff has still existed, but it's not, in Legion when I started, I was a casual and I was
Yeah.
interested in getting the different hidden artifact weapon appearances and then getting the different color tints and then going and doing the different order hall campaigns.
Yeah.
Um that kind of thing just isn't there now.
No, I mean I agree. And I think you starting in Legion it the game does a disservice to you, right, in that regard
Well,
because
like
you
I've been
started.
playing since Burning Crusade,
Well,
right?
that's fair, but I mean, like from that, like talking about being Legion being great. Legion also had the
The
ability to be
legendary
great,
thing at the start of the expansion, the AP grind at the start of the expansion.
right? But even before that, they had extra development time because
Oh,
they
that's
stopped
true.
developing WAD,
They
right? So
stopped working on WoD.
like WAD is like one of the as a standard length expansion missing an entire tier's worth of content, right?
Yeah,
So like that time went directly into Legion. So it's just
yeah.
like I think in general like that's like if we want another Legion or another like, MOP or something like that, we're gonna have to sacrifice part of the game to get that, it sounds like.
Or, and hear me out on this one, and they're kind of doing this. They could just hire more people.
That's
Like,
also
it's not. There's the mythical man month, if you've heard of that,
yeah,
of like, well, if one person would take a year to build something, then obviously 12 people can build it in a month, and that's not how anything works.
no.
But there is room for more people to be working on a game as big as WoW on non-overlapping chunks and building towards a greater whole. Things
Y-
like, imagine if they had given us, like, as part of Covenants, something like the artifact weapon books to go in and work on. It wasn't just like collecting this one armor set.
Yeah.
That, I mean, one armor set.
Yeah. That we finally now 6 month into it are generating enough anima to
Yeah,
actually
I might
afford
actually
those
get it
things.
now.
Yeah, like yeah, and I think yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I agree with that. Like but then at the same time, I get into this like I get these where I hear these sort of excerpts from people who like know about the inner workings of Blizzard and like the way that their team is structured and the fact that it's like, well, the person who designs the rewards and how they're given out isn't the actual person who designs the specific thing you get. Like one person designs that like you can get rewards by doing anima things, and then a different team altogether designs, okay, what are those specific rewards going to be? And then like there's
Yeah.
a third team that actually balances those things, and it's just like in that regard, to your point, right? Too many people end up potentially like ruining the
Yeah, I mean that
experience.
sounds
So
like that they've maybe got their teams structured in an unproductive way. But
yeah,
but I'm not a professional game designer, and that's going to be the extent of my comments on that particular MacGuffin.
fair enough.
Because I will put my foot in my mouth, and I would rather not.
That's fair. That's fair. So in any event, I used to wrap up that topic. Blizzard telling more people. Hopefully, it ends up being a good thing for the game in the future.
Yeah.
We'll get some cool stuff that comes out of it. So,
But speaking
cool.
of good casual content, we are going to be talking about Tazavesh
We
today.
are.
So this is the new mega dungeon that came out this patch. Uh, just straight off the bat, what do you think of it? Have you done it?
I did multiple times. Good. Enjoy it. Wish it was maybe slightly harder, but for the gear it drops, I wasn't expecting it to be ultra hard. But no, it's other than one boss, it is a great instance.
I'm
And there's
curious
only
what the
one
one
boss
boss
at it.
is. Well, I'm sure we'll
Actually,
get
well,
to it.
there's two, but yeah, one major one that I would say basically ruin it for me.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I think not totally, just that boss does. But no, I really enjoyed it. Done it. I think I've done it at this point every week, but this week. So
Yeah.
basically, got about 3 or 4 full clears in on it. I've actually only done hard mode,
Yeah.
so I've never done the normal
Same.
version of it. So I don't know the difference. So when I talk about what bosses do, I'm assuming that there's some difference. I actually pulled up a
I
sheet
have
with.
done part of the normal instance because I was helping a guildie get achievements there, and
Gotcha.
none of the achievement, or I don't know about none, but the achievements we were going to get weren't tied to hard mode, so it just made sense to
That's
do it
good.
in normal. So it was easier to do the achievement thing. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think to be fair, like I think to me, mega dungeons are an amazing piece of small group content that Blizzard needs to do more of.
yeah,
Because like I think
I would love.
the
So I don't know how many people it takes them to do the art and design and everything for a mega dungeon. It
Mhm,
would make my day if they just hired the people to do that, and every single patch had a mega dungeon. Just every
yeah,
single one. All of them. Like 6 months, here's a new mega dungeon. 6 months,
yeah,
here's a new mega dungeon. Like, or, if it doesn't have to be a mega dungeon every time, it can be, something like in Cataclysm, we got the troll dungeons, which I love. I know a
Mhm.
lot of people are kind of annoyed for various factors, like how they obsoleted all the gear from the other heroic dungeons and got rid of the old ZA mount and things like that. But
They did.
they're great dungeons. I really liked them. So like I would be very, very, very happy if they just every patch just throw dungeons at us.
Yeah.
And that's
No,
something
yeah.
that they kind of did in Legion too. I think we got every single patch we got a dungeon. We got Karazhan, then we got
Yeah.
the Cathedral, then we got Seat.
I think Cathedral and Seat were the same patch.
No, because Seat was in Argus and Cathedral was in
Oh, right, right. Yep, yep, yep.
Tomb.
Yep.
Except that Cathedral may as well have been in Argus because they didn't nerf it until then.
True. That's true. So I mean the dungeon itself is a lot of fun. Tons of like it's very intricate, a lot of detail everywhere. There's some cool stuff that happens. So but yeah, I've had fun going through it. So I guess you just want to sort of like step through the bosses, maybe what we like, disliked on each
Yeah,
one, and then sort of like maybe some of the stuff in between them.
yeah.
If anything sort of stands out. So
So the first
um
boss is Zo'phex, and he's basically the guard. He's the guy that is supposed to keep the people that aren't supposed to be in the market out of the market, aka us.
yep,
Um, and the hard mode version of this fight is very similar to the normal version. It's just that you don't do any of the trash basically before the boss. So on normal mode, you go in, you clear the trash, you do the boss. On hard mode, you don't clear any of the trash, so you have less space to do the boss, or you will pull trash and die. There's
yep,
also a little mini boss in there with the boss that you can just like kill and then do the boss by himself, and no other new mechanics.
yep.
Um, but
Yeah, so fun fact on this, so there is the mini boss before the boss, the Portal
mhm,
Master, I think his name is, and then Zo'phex shows up. Um, every time I've gone in there, some DPS in my group has blown all their DPS cooldowns on the mini boss,
yes,
thinking that's the actual
we
boss.
had someone the normal run I was doing for achievements that hit bloodlust on the mini boss.
So good. So good. But yeah, so this boss is actually pretty interesting. I mean, nothing too crazy. Like the hard mode, of course, yeah, you have less room. Since you don't do any of the trash, after you engage the boss, the trash actually becomes active, so you have a lot less room to move.
Yeah,
Um, but the boss itself isn't too difficult. It does like a rotating shield around him that's kind of annoying to deal with, where it
yeah,
blocks any attacks from that. And then he makes you randomly drop your weapon, which you have to go and find, which is great if you're doing it for the first time with someone who doesn't know how to do that. And all of a
yes.
sudden I just make fun of people. I'm just like, why are you doing no damage? Or like, why are you dying? Like, this is ridiculous. And like, they're like, I can't, I'm silenced. I was like, I don't know. Like, I was like, well, did you drop your weapon? They're like, no, I didn't. I was like, look around on the floor, bud. It's there. Um,
Ah, so cruel. He also puts
yeah.
people in cages and then does massive spinning blades towards
Oh,
them
that's right.
very
It's actually
slowly. Um, and you gotta break them out of the cage before the boss reaches them, or they die. Uh,
yeah. You can also do a bunch of immunities work on that
right.
though. By the
So
way,
you can like ice block it, and Bop works on it, things like that.
cloak, feign, turtle,
Invis, yeah.
yeah, beacon of visit, yeah. So,
Although I think
but no,
invising
this
it is hard because of the delay, but yeah,
yeah. But I mean, it's a good first boss. Good like intro.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It also, if you're tanking it, hits noticeably harder than almost every other boss in the instance. So if you go in and you tank it and you go, oh my god, I'm getting smashed. Oh, I can't tank this instance. This is just the first boss. I'm gonna die. No, don't worry. First boss hits harder than the rest.
nice, nice. So yeah, so then from I don't know if there's anything else to say on that guy, but then from there you go into actually one of my favorite parts of the instance. Actually,
Trading
well,
game.
you can go anywhere, but I think
Okay, yeah.
everybody goes to the right, which is
Which,
towards like the music boss. You do that trading game,
yeah,
uh, which is a fun little mini game. I don't know if I told this story, but the first time we went in there, we didn't realize that. So when you walk into the trading district, there's like two hallways you can, or two like
yeah,
strips you can go down, a left one and a right one. If you go down the right one, you can basically get to the door to where you need to go for the next boss. Um, but you never get the guy to like buy the item to start the trading game because you didn't trigger the RP. And to trigger the RP, you need to
yeah.
go
You
down
go
the
down the
left hand
left one.
hallway.
Yeah.
So we
Yep.
spent 45 minutes
Oh my god.
resetting the instance multiple times thinking we screwed up because like our rogue ran right up there and like talked to the guy at the door and thought like, oh, we broke it. Now I have to like restart. So
Yeah.
yeah, it
No,
was hell.
I've had multiple different groups that I've been in be confused about how you're supposed to trigger that RP. Like one of them said, "Oh, you got to talk to the guard first. That's what triggers it." Another one is like, "Oh, you just got to wait. It happens on its own." And you know, you have to go. There's a doll or whatever his name is.
Yeah, you
The
just have to walk near him.
the NPC from the quests that you do to unlock the dungeon. You got to go and like walk up next to him, and then he will start walking over to the door. You don't have to talk to the guard. You don't have to guess. You don't have to like have him kick you in the face.
Yeah.
You just gotta like wait for him to talk. He will turn on the NPC that you then start the trading game from. And the trading game is fairly simple. Like he drops an item on the ground that someone has to pick up. While they have it picked up, they're silenced and slowed. But things like Ghost Wolf get through the slow, and they you have to like figure out, okay, let's say he drops a sword. Well, which merchant is going to want a sword? You gotta figure that out. There's, okay, the exotic weapons merchant, maybe he wants the sword, and then he gives you, a bag of diamonds. And you might be thinking, well, I mean, that's great, I'll just take the bag of diamonds and go. But no, the gem merchant wants this. And so you go through this sequence and eventually get the password for the club, and then you can go in and do the music boss.
Yeah. Yeah, and the music boss is fun actually. So like essentially it's like a couple waves of like you sort of kick the band off the stage and then eventually you fight. You get to like pick up their weapons. If you do like there's like each weapon has an extraction button and when you hit it you do like a certain like move or like
Yeah.
movement. And then if you match the circles on the ground in front of you with that movement, you get like a buff. I think it's a
Yeah.
haste buff. If you hit
And
all your
then,
haste buffs, you get like haste and damage, right?
yeah, you get a 25% haste and 25% damage buff if you hit every note, which is
Yeah.
pretty nice.
Yeah, it's fun. So you do that and then like there's like waves. So like first wave it's like random enemies, second wave it's the actual
Band that got kicked
the
off the
band that got
stage.
kicked off, yeah. And then the third wave is the actual boss. So yeah, so this is actually a lot of fun. I will tell you as the healer, I always picked up the drums and
Yeah.
I would just sit in the drums the entire time at AFK. And like just sort of which you don't have to do. I realize you can like get up and move around.
Yeah.
Now after doing it a couple times. The first time I did, I just sat in the drums
I've
and did my thing.
I've
So
taken the saxophone every single time that I've done it. I have no idea what any of the other ones do.
yeah, yeah, no,
Um,
I actually do only know the drums too. So
one note about this boss is like kind of a gauntlet style. You don't have a combat drop in between ad waves, um, but also the previous band, the different band members will just fixate. You can't like taunt them or get threat or anything like that, and don't let people tell you otherwise. It doesn't work. So that does mean that when your healer's getting focused, you probably want to deal with that band member first, so that they can
right.
then heal through other people getting hit by stuff. Because if they're the one that's getting fixated, they're not healing any of you.
Exactly, exactly. But no, this is actually a really cool boss. I mean, I like the whole like instrument aspect of it. That's really fun. Um, so I guess moving on. Oh, and the one thing too, so right outside the door to this music hall is, and we didn't notice this the first time we went through the instance, but found out later on is that there's like portals actually everywhere in this place,
Yeah.
which is very surprising, which is like essentially the
So the
behind the
portal.
first.
You remember the mini boss that you kill before the first boss, the portal master?
Yeah.
There's a bunch of portals there to get you to
Yep.
different
Yep.
places in the instance.
So right behind the first boss, he has like all these different portals, and then if you go to the portal that is where it is in the instance and activate it, if you wipe, you always respawn at the front of the instance, but you can use the portals to quickly get back to where you were.
Yep.
Which is cool. So there's like one of those there right outside the door. So I guess the next boss is the mailroom mayhem boss, which
Yeah.
I read about and was like, oh man, this is gonna be hard. We have to talk a lot. It's gonna be pretty crazy until you actually do it and you realize that at least in my gear that we could do it, you just nuke the boss. You
Yeah.
like heroism, bloodlust. Nobody moves. No one moves. You just sit there and you try and do as much damage as you can to the boss before
Yeah.
everything explodes and kills you.
So week one, this boss was bugged. This boss has this mechanic where there's packages that are gonna explode, and you gotta like pass them through one of the different mail chutes so they explode somewhere else. Um, and you couldn't pick them up. the
Right.
first week, or you couldn't consistently pick them up. So if you were planning to do the mechanic, you might just die. Um, so that led to the just bloodlust and prey strategy, which turns out that, especially now that people have more gear, you should be able to pretty reliably do this in pugs as well. So you
Hmm.
just like everybody saves all your CDs for this. You don't use them on the music boss if you can help it, unless they'll be back up. And then you bloodlust, drop ashen, drop every CD you've got on top of this boss. You don't have to soak the puddles; they just spawn. So there's like things that look like you have to stand in them or they explode. You don't
Yep.
have to. They spawn a puddle if you don't stand in them. But if you're never moving, it doesn't matter. So you just sit there, kill the boss, and that's it. It's the whole
Makes
boss.
it real easy. Makes it real easy. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, yeah, you don't get to do yeah, well, because when normally those goods like root you to on heroic, so like the idea is you
Yeah.
make like a chain of people to be able to throw it.
The
Um,
uh the hard mode mechanic is that I think you get more of them and they root you.
yeah.
And
So
then
it's
there's an achievement for passing them to different to another person before they get thrown into the mail chute as well. So like we did that achievement. So we had to actually do the mechanic in
yeah, yeah,
order
yeah.
to get the achievement.
Interesting.
But yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, so that boss, I mean, it was sort of like I mean, I was a little nervous about it, but the fact that you can just sit there and bloodlust, pretty easy.
Yeah.
Um, cool. So then we get to I think the final boss sort of at this level before we go up to I think it's sort of like the mid boss. It's called the menagerie, but it's basically like um three different mini bosses that sort of spawn at certain points. To be fair, I don't know what any of them really do other than I know one gives
I
you a
do.
debuff. So I know that one gives you maybe you explain it then because all I know is one gives you a debuff and you have to soak balls with it to get a damage bonus, but I don't know
Yeah.
anything
So
else.
basically, each one of them has like two mechanics. The first one's a big devourer dude, and one of the hard mode things is you end up with both of them or with two mini bosses up at the same time instead of one at a time.
Mhm.
So the first one is this devourer thing. Second one is basically Brawn, the Kyrian like Goliath kind of things, and then the third one is basically what's the other Mana Storm? Not Millhouse. Maleficent
Maleficent?
is basically like Maleficent except crazier, and she
Okay.
gets her hand on the stupid sword from the Zymox fight and does the Zymox like axe sucking you in as you don't get out you die mechanic. But
Hmm.
so the Devourer basically has two different things he does. One of them just drags you in. You got to get out of the circle. No big deal. The second one is that he puts a debuff on people. And that debuff
Hmm.
basically doesn't do anything, except that the Goliath, the second boss, has a venting protocol where he will send out blue orbs throughout the room that do a bunch of damage if you get hit by them, unless you have
Hmm.
that debuff. In which case, when you consume them, it gives you a damage buff.
Gotcha. So
So,
that's yeah, 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 yeah. That makes sense.
and even while dead, the Goliath will continue doing the venting. So you will have blue orbs up the whole fight. You'll have this debuff. It jumps from person to person. You'll have that up the whole fight. Um, and then the third boss is honestly the hardest one. So if you have CDs, maybe save it for that because it's just like the hard one.
Yeah.
Because the suck in actually sucks pretty hard. You are gonna probably want movement CDs if you're not a monk. You get out of it. Monks you can just roll. It's fine.
Yeah.
And then she'll
That's
also
bad.
put people in a cage, and they have to like you can move very very slowly. It's like a 98% slow or something, but you can still move. Um, but that does make getting out of the axe or dodging the orbs pretty difficult. So you gotta break them out.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I will tell you that in the only thing that I remember are like sort of the bombs and then like the blue soaking the blue balls because I think what the debuff will jump to someone in range when it expires and like so always being in melee as sort of it would jump to me randomly and be like, oh, what do I do here?
Yeah,
Um, so so yeah, so that's a quick. I mean, it seems like yeah, the hard mode is basically you don't normally they would come down one at a time, right? But with hard mode, they come down after a certain amount of time, so you sort of have some overlap with two of the
yeah.
little mini bosses. I guess the bosses down at the same time. So yeah, not. I mean, soaking's okay, not that interesting. So cool. So then we get into what is it? Sozami,
So Azami.
uh,
Yeah.
which is the worst boss in the instance.
I actually like this boss.
So what
I
every week
hated it
I've
the
done.
first time though, so I understand your pain.
So yeah, so the way the boss works is basically like there's a bunch of essentially teleporters that he will move around the room and they all have shapes. So there's what, four different shapes? So there's eight teleporters, and if you run into one, you'll port to the other one that has the same shape, right?
Yep.
And then he'll do a move called triple technique or double technique. So triple technique is the hard mode version of it, where basically he'll cast a 10-second thing. You have to interrupt it multiple times. So double technique, interrupt it twice. Triple technique, interrupted 3 times within those 10 seconds to stop it. If not, you essentially die. It's a huge dot on you. And you will also put like a ever expanding zone that does damage on the edge of it, the ring. So you
Yeah,
sort of have
it's
to
called
use the teleporters to
Shuri.
jump
Yeah.
over. Yeah, jump over it.
You
And
can
the
also use other things like Transcendence to jump over it. So you can transcend it,
True.
you can blink it. I don't think Leap works.
I don't
But
think either.
there are other ways to get over it, kind of like the Painsmith spikes. There are
Yeah.
other ways to get past it.
Yeah, and the final thing that he does, which is the reason I think I hate this fight the most, is he walls off part of the arena. So it's like at 60-ish% health, he'll wall it off in half, and then at 30 or 40-ish% health, he'll wall it off in the like
Yeah.
perpendicular to that
So you
one.
end
So
up
it
with like
basically makes it,
4 quadrants.
yeah, at the end of the fight. And then he also teleports in any of those and starts casting that double technique or triple technique. So the issue that we had as a group was always that he would end up teleporting to a square or a quadrant that we had no one in, and there was only one teleporter in it. And it was never a teleporter that was also in the same square we were. So there was like a quick, like 2 to 3 second, like, okay, you got to go like triangle to circle to square and then interrupt, or like triangle to circle and then interrupt. And also there's a one of those wavy things coming out. So you had to go like triangle, half a second, wait, then go square, then go circle, and then interrupt. And so what would end up happening is like it would always jump to a square with nobody in. So then we had to do this whole math thing, and then it would just take too long to like actually kill the
Yeah.
boss.
So a couple of
Um,
tips for that. One, after every kick of the triple technique, he will teleport to a different, or he can teleport to a different quadrant. I believe he always will teleport to a different quadrant. So what you want to do is have one person go kick him the first time, and the others like try and get to the different quadrants so that they're already there when he teleports, and that makes it a lot easier to do. And then the other thing is pets can kick; they can just walk through the walls. So if you have a warlock in your group,
mm,
they can have their fellhound just walk through the walls and kick him.
that would be helpful. Or you could do what my group did, which was essentially as soon as the second wall comes up, lust and kill him before he does anything.
Yeah, that also works too. We
So
we
like,
uh we didn't do that, but we talked about it.
yeah. So I mean, like on it's funny the first week, and actually, excuse me. Yeah, I think even the second week we killed it. He didn't actually do double or triple technique. So that makes the fight like, so this is my other issue with this fight is that
You can push him too fast.
you can push him too fast or he won't cast the ability. And we never were able to figure out like how it happens because like we had lusted pulls where like he would still cast it no matter what we
Yeah.
did, or like unlusted pulls where we'd get him really low and he wouldn't cast it until like
It's
the
probably
final
one of those
5%.
weird like Nerzul things where you have to do it while he has to have the timer for casting triple technique has to come up while he's casting divide or something like that. Kind of like
Yeah.
on Nerzul, you can't do this anymore, but you could skip an orb set by having the timer for that come up while he's casting shatter.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean that was sort of the frustration I think that I felt with this boss was that it was very inconsistent. So number one, his he can port to any of the four quadrants, which I get it, but that becomes somewhat frustrating, particularly for like my group where we had like it was hunter, mage, rogue. Wait, hunter, mage. Does that make sense? Hunter, mage, rogue. Me as a Mistweaver, and then I think our tank was like a DH or DK or something. It didn't matter, but it was tank. So we had two ranged interrupts, and you know a melee interrupt, and then the tank, and like the healer couldn't interrupt. We had no like fell hunter pet shenanigans. So for us, it was
Yeah,
like if we didn't get people in the right squares right away, we were sort of
yeah,
screwed. So
yeah. But I do think if you don't, so this week when I've done it twice this week, Both times we got two of the triple techniques, and then the rest of the fight was just doing the Shuri mechanic, which is the expanding ring. And I honestly think the expanding ring part is like the way more fun part of the fight than the triple technique part.
I agree. Yeah.
So if you just mostly have to do Shuri, it's actually like pretty fun.
Yeah, that it's fun to figure out like, all right, where do I need to jump to? Like, did I miss it?
Yeah.
So,
Also,
yeah.
one thing I've seen from a lot of people is that people really like overcomplicating how you have to jump in order to get past Shuri. They're like, oh, go triangle to the square, the circle, and like, or you can wait 3 seconds and then just go through triangle.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
okay to sit there and wait for it to pass over something and then go.
Yeah. Yeah. We our group sort of tried to move almost immediately. I guess what we also ended up doing was sort of like as soon as he gets like as soon as it's a triple technique, just spread. So like one person go right to the boss and everybody else sort of spread, which I guess you
Yeah,
mentioned. So yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. But other than I mean, other than the triple technique being pretty random, it's not a terrible boss. It's just like we wiped to that probably like 5 or 6 times over like the course of 2 weeks, which was like frustrating. So
yeah,
um
yeah. I
so
mean,
cool.
we
So
probably wiped
oh,
three or
sorry.
four times to it the first day, and then I don't think I've wiped to it since. But I'm also running exclusively with guild groups at this point, so
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's definitely helpful, and that'll be pretty helpful coming up. So yeah, so after this boss, you basically reach the midpoint of the instance, and then you get to start chasing Soleil. Is that it? Soleil,
yeah, something like that.
Soli, or
Soleil,
whatever.
Solia, something like
Yeah,
that.
through time. So you end up going to Stormheim and fighting a boss by the name of
Okay, hang on.
Hylbrande.
Before we talk about the boss, we have to talk about the real boss of Storm, which
The
is the
trash.
invigorating fish stick.
Yes, yes, for the
Don't
trash. So,
pull multiple packs. Uh, you will end up spending so much time just killing fish sticks that you don't actually get to do damage to the actual trash. Because they're totems and they like don't get damaged by cleave and all this stuff. Don't
yeah.
don't pull multiple packs. We had a and I've known that because people were talking about it from PTR. So like day one, I was like, don't pull multiple packs. We're going one pack at a time here. Um, in the normal run that we did for achievements, we had a pug in there that between them and Earth Ellie going rogue chasing a Murloc
Oh
managed to have
no.
like 4 packs chain pull. And
Oh, you're just
we
dead.
eventually killed it, but boy did it take a while.
That's funny. That's funny. Yeah, I mean that was that too. So not only the fish sticks are awful, but don't loot that trash because then you just end up with like millions of clams for no reason. Like don't loot
Also,
that
it
trash.
drops Legion cloth and fish, that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah, it's rough. But then you get to I guess Hylbrande. I don't know how you pronounce
Yeah,
this. Which is fairly straightforward boss. Their big thing in the big mechanic here is essentially there's like an intermission phase that occurs. And so the boss is like damage. There's some ads that come in, not too important, right? But there's an intermission phase where there are 4 consoles in the corners of the room that you need to activate. And then when you activate them, there are 4 runes that spawn in the center, and you basically have to take the right colored rune, the right console. And to know which ones to go to, there is a 5th console at the middle, like the front of the room, where someone needs to click and basically tell you where to go. Which I don't know how you pug this boss. Like the amount of time between like clicking the middle console, getting everybody to pick up the right color orb and get in the right spot, like at that point, like
you
you're
can
dead from room damage.
you can
But
basically do this with 2 people, one person on the main console and one person running all of the orbs. If you have
that's
something like
true,
a
yeah.
monk doing it to run the
Yeah.
orbs. Also, the achievement for this boss is to put all the orbs in the consoles while standing in the fire.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's actually
That sounds
called "This Is
awful.
Fine."
That's a good achievement. That sounds
Um,
awful. That sounds awful. So I have a question. So I devised a very simple solution to how to do this. However, uh, no one in my group thought. Well, one person in my group thought it was not a very good solution. So my solution to this was like, if you're the person in the middle of the console, the runes sort of appear not all at once, but appear like one at a time in a certain order. It's basically like if you're
yeah,
looking at it, it's like the top left, top right, bottom right, bottom left. And basically, I said is like if you're clicking that console, just say the color of the rune in that order. Like, don't be like red top right. Just literally
yeah,
say like if the first one that comes up, say red, which means the person who is at that front console needs to run and get red and then bring it back because
Yeah,
they just know the order you say them is the right, that's the order they need to be in the room.
I think that
To me, that
if
was
the time
beautiful.
crunch were tighter, I think that would make sense. But since there's actually a decent bit of time, what we did that we've done pretty successfully every time is just like color location, color front right, color front left, just go through them and say what's what. Very
Yeah,
clear, no room for mistaking what's going on, and then you just do all the dunks and it's fine. So I
interesting.
think that's a decent. I think that's a reasonable idea. I just don't think the fight warrants that level of.
I will tell you that in the groups I was in, it warranted the
Okay.
quickness of saying that because number one, we were very slow to getting consoles activated because we had ads up going in there,
Oh,
and
okay.
then
That's the real thing. So the real thing is during phase one, you want to always enter the intermission with 0 ads up. If there is ever an ad alive, you want to one, kill it, and two, kick it. Like, do not let the ads cast. Like, I don't care if Bloodlust is up and the boss is at 2%, kill the fucking ads.
yeah,
So two of the ads will channel a damage reduction on the boss as well. So there's like a reason for boss damage to kill the ads. But then also the ads. So there's on hard mode. There's two types of ads. There's big ads and little ads. Big ads just do an AOE cast. You just kick them and the tank tanks them and that's it. The little ads will give a damage reduction to the boss. They will also make the consoles in the intermission uninteractable until they are dead.
yes.
So you do need to be killing the ads. They are the number one priority. So if you're pugging this boss, kill the ads.
Always kill the ads. Always kill them. So yeah, so that was sort of our trouble for the longest time was
Yeah,
that, and then finally got through it. That's why we did the whole quick strat because we needed to quickly dunk on that
yeah,
one. But
yeah,
yeah, this boss, I mean, it's still a fun boss. I like bosses like this where it's like always a little dynamic in
yeah.
terms of like what you're
I
trying
think
to
this is
put
a good
together.
boss. Yeah.
So yeah, this is fun. Um, let's go quickly through this next one. This is the pirate
Oh, this was
time
such a
dragon.
disappointment. Yeah.
Yeah, so model wise, beautiful, awesome, seem really fun. The actual fight is a joke. I think it's actually the easiest boss in the instance.
So this is 100% a tank fight, and it's not even like
Yeah.
a very, very like. Basically, this fight, there's a bunch of pirate ads that spawn, and you could kill the pirate ads. They fixate on people, so you can't like very efficiently grip them up or anything. But the boss does a frontal. That's this huge frontal. It will kill any pirates in front of it. So you
Mhm.
point it at the pirates, you get out of dodge, and you have the boss kill the pirates for you. Boss also has a tail swipe, which just basically just means that the melee have to be very careful not to get hit by the tail swipe, and then the range have to be careful not to get hit by the frontal. Other than that, no big deal. Um, that's the whole fight. That's it. it's
Yeah.
there's like some fire that spawns on the ground that you got to move out of, and that's about it. Um, but even if you like miss a bunch of the pirates with the frontal, it's just not a big deal. They don't have that much health. You can just like
They don't do
leave
that much
them.
damage.
Yeah.
And if you do the strat where you tank the boss
In the
away from
top
the
left
ship,
corner, yeah.
yeah, and just point him at the ship always, that's where all the ads spawn. So even if you don't hit every ad, you hit the majority of the ads just by facing him the same direction.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
makes it even easier.
It's
So
super super dumb.
I think we literally one shot that without really realizing what we were doing. Like
Yeah.
just sort of just like walked in and killed it. So
Yeah.
um
This was such a disappointment. They could have done a lot more with it and um
yeah,
but
yeah. It would have been cool though. So
and
um
then we get to Solia, which oh my god, this boss visually is one of the most like different and stunning bosses that they have made in a while.
yeah. Yeah, I will say that this boss from like its mechanics and what it does, I think is really fun. There is one issue I have with it, and it's actually with the collapsing star mechanic. But
Okay, yeah.
in general, I agree. Like the what I don't know what they're called the relics that spawn in phase two or whatever look really cool. Just a lot of the animations are interesting. Like it's a very good like boss fight. But yeah, so I guess to get into it, right? Like the fight itself, I'd say is a ramp up in terms of healing requirements that I don't think I've seen in an instance before. Normally, it's just like you're stepping, you're stepping, you're stepping. This is like very low healing requirements,
And
and
then
then this
suddenly,
boss.
yeah,
Boss, which you're like, holy hell. So yeah, for me, healing it the first time, that was sort of the biggest thing around like hitting it and just I think we died the first time because I didn't heal because I didn't realize how much damage was going out.
yeah,
Um and then the other side of it was so yeah, so there's that. And I think the biggest reason for that is this collapsing star mechanic,
yeah.
which essentially
So
is like or if you want to explain it.
yeah, so we found the way to go with this. So what it is I mean the traps on Painsmith are a good comparison. So the traps on Painsmith apply a debuff to the raid group, and if you break two traps while the debuff is up, the second one deals double damage, the third one does triple damage, the fourth one does quadruple damage, and if you do that, you're dead. Um, so the collapsing star on this boss is basically that it spawns a star that pulls everybody in, and you have to have people soak it, but you got to stagger it so that you don't refresh this debuff. Once you soak it, you have a dot that, for one thing, increases your damage taken from collapsing star. So every future one is going to deal more damage to you regardless. And it also just has a dot on you, so you get ticked down from that. So there's a pretty high healing requirement for that. The way we ended up doing it that seemed best was having the tank get the first one, and then having three other people get the remaining three charges of it.
Mhm.
You can let it explode on the last charge, technically, but that applies the dot from it to everyone instead of just the final person to soak it. So would not recommend.
Yeah. We also found something too, which was interesting, is that if you soak them too quickly, you can make it disappear in terms of its graphic, but it's still actually falling. So we actually wiped to that 2 times. So our strategy was actually have the tank take the first 2, because
Okay,
really only
yeah,
the tank is getting like the initial double debuff.
yeah.
And so they can sort of cool down it. The problem was our tank was soaking them too quickly. So the first time it happened, like they soaked 2 real quick. They were like, "Oh, it disappeared. Nothing else is soaked. Cool." And then we died because there was 2 more charges that hadn't been soaked that then went on everyone, right?
Yeah,
So, so yeah, you can definitely soak it too quickly, which I think is annoying, but yeah, it's a lot of damage. And also on heroic, it pulls you in,
yeah,
and so you become closer to it, so then you can also inadvertently trigger it as you get pulled in.
yeah.
There's a healer like me, like most of my targeted healing spells are like I have a cast time and I can't move, so it's like I have to run really far away.
And they get
Like, make
pulled
sure
in.
make sure I
Yeah.
can heal, I can get pulled in
The
twice and
the
heal, and
amount
so,
that you
yeah.
get pulled in scales with the number of charges left in it. So getting the first two charges off pretty quickly means that then you can start doing a lot more healing.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah. That that
um,
was that was fun to sort of learn how to handle that damage,
yeah,
like, through the fight, which was a lot.
yeah. What I did on, so when I did it on my paladin, I soaked the first one and then soaked the last one with either bubble or a defensive CD. My monk, I don't feel like has good enough defensive CDs and is so bad against dots. I feel like, yeah, I could do it just because gear, but
Yeah.
it sucks. I don't want to.
Yeah.
Like, none
Yeah.
of my CDs are good against that damage profile, and the boss actually hits reasonably hard.
Yeah. So that part of the fight, and that happens both in phase 1 and phase 2. So that's definitely a lot of healing.
Speaking of phases, before we continue, this is a two-phase encounter. The first phase, you fight Solia as she is. Second phase, she like transforms and refills her health bar.
Yeah.
Do not press Bloodlust in phase one. Save it for phase two. And then once you transition into phase two, she is immune until you handle a mechanic that we'll get to in a minute. So don't press Bloodlust immediately into transitioning into phase two either, or it will go to waste.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely did that. But yeah, so phase 1 I think is like to 70%. It's fairly quick. There's some
Yeah.
ads that get spawned with her sort of at the start here,
Yeah,
but
she spawns some
um
assassins. They just gotta get kicked, and then you kill them. That's it.
yeah. But then we get into like the beautiful phase, I'll say, which is
Yeah,
phase 2, and there's the relics that spawn. And basically there are these 5 relics, for lack of a better term, that sort of spawn around the room, and like you basically need to interact with them with a couple different abilities, right? So the first thing is, like Emallson said, when she transitions, she sort of spawns these relics, and then she's immune in the center, does not move, and the relics sort of spawn, and then they move and plant their feet. And the idea is there's another ability called Hyperlight Jolt, which is like a chaining damage that goes through everybody in the group.
Do you
And basically, you want
remember
to make
the first boss of Sethraless Temple? The
yep,
charge that that boss did through everybody in the group. It's like that, except it doesn't do a bajillion damage. It actually interacts with the relics.
right. And so you
And
want to get the relics to be hit right by
yeah,
those things.
you got to get the arrows through all 5 relics, and then once you do that, the boss stops being immune, and you can proceed with the phase. Press Bloodlust. You still have to do Collapsing Star. She will do. You'll have to do the relic thing again.
Hmm.
Um, but that's pretty much what else happens in that phase. There's like stuff to
The
dodge,
the relics eventually explode. So the
right?
relics will explode
Which
in like the
also looks
star.
super cool.
Does a lot of damage if you get hit by them, but looks really cool. And the one thing about the relics too, just with that hyperlight jolt, I think in normal mode you just have to hit all 5 once, and you can go over multiple casts. In hard mode, you have to get them all hit in the same cast.
Yeah,
So like everybody in the group has to make sure they're stacked up. And the way that we ended up handling that was essentially like when the relics first spawn, everybody just picks one and stands by it. You can't do anything because
yeah,
she's immune and like you're just sort of standing. So everybody picks one, and then essentially sort of that's your quadrant. And if you just follow the relic to where it is, and then our goal is always there. The way that the graphic on the ground works is it's like an arrow that goes from your player character to another one. And
yeah.
basically, you want the point of the arrow to be going through the relic near you, is the way we
Yep.
figured it out. That way,
So
like
it's
you had
very
the most control.
it's very important. Like standing inside the relic graphic is not what you need to do here. Sometimes it will work. Frequently, it will not. You need to have the arrow that's coming to you through the relic.
Yeah. Yeah, and that'll do the trigger. But yeah, and so that's I think the biggest thing that we ended up doing in that phase. And it was it's not it's a great fight. I mean, it's a great fight to end that boss on, or sorry, end the instance on. Just a lot of damage, visually looks very very cool. Um but yeah, other than that one collapsing star where if you soak it too quickly, it disappears, which sort of sucks. I mean, there wasn't any other major issues or bugs that we ran into, right?
Yeah, yeah. The
Across the
only
instance,
one
so
is like the mailroom one,
yeah, early on, yeah.
but that one is easily remedied and has actually been fixed, so that doesn't happen anymore. But yeah, this instance is really good, really good.
Yeah.
I actually would be really really excited if they came out with like a 2 or 3 boss raid, a la Trial of Valor, in a few months that was just like take Solia and basically make 3 bosses, 2 or 3 bosses in that vein, and just give us a
Yeah.
mini tier, to tide us over until the next patch.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really talk about it, but, like, the art style of this city, like, I will say, like, Blizzard does a very good job in terms of, like, and maybe it's just I mean, I guess art generally personal preference, but to me, they do a very good job in terms of, like, the type of cities that they build. So, like,
Yeah,
this was another one of those where, like, it felt like a city. There was lots of cool stuff everywhere, like, in the courtyard before the 4th boss, the wall boss, like, there's those electric gates that you can run into that stun
yeah.
you, which I thought was cool.
The trash in
Um
the area also has a knockback that goes on the tank. That you can get knocked through the electric fences and you will get stunned.
Yeah,
Do not recommend. It is a good way to die quickly.
exactly, exactly. So no, it was overall, I mean, as Blizzard always does, I think they do a really good job with these type of things. And yeah, I mean, I'd take a small raid, I take at least one mega dungeon every content patch. I think that makes sense. I think they're fun. So
Yeah,
so cool. So I know we're a little bit out of time. We kind of had to wrap this one up a little bit quickly. So, I do want to do a couple things. So we're not going to get to lore corner, of course, this week. We'll talk about that next week. I did want to talk a little bit about
about
that, so
the
we'll make sure we get some time.
Alloon stuff.
Yeah, the Alune
Yeah,
stuff is interesting. But of course we do have. So that's unfortunately we're not going to do that. But we do have some Q&A. We did actually get 2 very good questions this week. So if you're out there, hold on, let me get the names because I want to tell these guys that we'll get to their question eventually. So Mountain, we have your question. We don't have enough time to do it today, I think, to do it justice. So we'll definitely get that on the docket for next week. And then Bill's 12 ounces. We'll also get to your question. Those are 2 very good questions, but time constraints, we're only going to get to do one. But of course, quick Q&A. As always, this is my favorite time of the podcast. You guys can send your questions in. Emallson and I'll answer them. It'll be fun if we generally have time. Unfortunately, we don't have time for everything today, but we'll make
yeah.
time next week for sure. But we did get one question from old Abe that I feel like is appropriate given we did spend a lot of time talking about, Blizzard and their hiring practice. So old Abe asks, of course, if y'all, of course he's from Georgia, has to say y'all, had to pick a vet mod or admin to get one of the designer roles at Blizzard, who would it be and why? They also mentioned, remember the birds are watching. Is that an Alfred Hitchcock reference? I don't,
I think
that,
that is a reference to the bird lady, aka Shrike.
oh, okay. Okay. Interesting.
Or
Interesting.
or it's just he's got little birds that are watching the podcast. It could be
I
that too.
guess. Yeah, I don't own birds, so. So who would I pick? I will be honest with you. My interaction outside of really emallson and Babs in terms of people outside of Mistweavers is very limited, right?
Right.
So I don't know if I am in a person to pick who would be a good
I
designer. I
mean,
mean,
I would not be. I would. I'm in the same boat. I don't really know any of the Mistweaver people. I don't really know any of the Windwalker people. If I were
yeah,
gonna just like pick someone and just not be me, it would
yeah,
probably be either Shrike, who no longer plays WoW, but longtime WoW player, had a lot of very big contributions to the Brewmaster community, or it would
yeah.
probably be Panini.
Okay, okay. Interesting. I mean, I'm gonna do what you would probably expect me to do. I'd probably just pick myself.
Yeah,
In
so I,
terms of
I
like,
explicitly did not like. I'm not picking myself for this.
I don't. So
So if it
yeah, I
can't
don't
be
know
you,
if it can't be me. I mean, it'd probably be Volk at the end of the day. I
I
think
was
just from like
wondering.
a, yeah, just from like just a game knowledge perspective, I think he'd probably be pretty good at it. I mean, the biggest issue that I'd see from like a design perspective, and I'll be really truthful here. The reason I don't think I'd pick anybody else is I don't know if I feel like in some cases people who are like community leaders are just good at games and maybe not good
Yeah,
at designing games, right?
yeah,
And so like I think Volk has sort of in my mind shown that, yeah, potentially good at least the design chops of things,
yeah,
um versus just like playing the game very well, which I think like Dobbs, Living, Abe, Lab,
yeah.
and
And that's like we
I
spend
know
so
this
much
guy's there.
time talking about how the game is, and working on numbers on how the game is. It's really hard for me to say because like there's a very short list of people that I actually have had like design conversations with.
Right,
And within the monk community, that's basically just been Shrike, where we
right,
actually talked like, here's the design problems. Here is like an in-depth conversation about how we would address the design problems and what we would do about it. And so Shrike is someone I'd be pretty confident saying like, yeah, they could do it. Um,
yeah,
Other than that, I don't have a lot of experience. Like, I don't. I try to not engage in too much armchair game design. Um,
yeah.
Still do it a fair bit because I mean, look at
You have
what
to,
we're
yeah,
doing right now on this podcast. But
exactly.
it's something I try to avoid because it's just not very.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in a lot of cases, you give the best feedback you can based on the decisions made and not try and like say like, "Oh, you should revert this decision," or like, "Hey, make this decision differently." It's like, "Hey, you made this decision, you put this in the game. This is why it's not either good or this is what it makes us feel," and things like that. So, or how it feels. So, yeah, I mean, I'd say Volk, and then I guess I have to say like probably Abe too, so he doesn't get angry and I have to get angry pings from him about how I didn't say his name.
Everybody ping Anam. Tell him he should have picked Abe. All
No,
what, six of
I
you that are watching this?
exactly. No, I think it's yeah, I think Volker. I mean, yeah, Abe could do it too. I mean, yeah, but probably only those two. I'll be completely honest with you. Sorry, everybody else that I'm now upset. So, um, you just
Yeah,
paid me. But yeah, I think that's it. So sorry. I mean, this was a long episode. I think we had a lot of catching
we
up
had
to
a
do at the
lot of catching
beginning.
up to do.
Yeah.
But we will get to the rest of the questions next week. We will make sure of it, as well as to the lore corner and talk about some of the stuff going on with Alune, which this week's campaign quest went directions I wasn't expecting as someone that didn't look at any spoilers. So,
Yeah.
yeah, interesting times. But that is going to be it for today's episode. Thank you all for watching and or listening. If you like this show and you want to support it and the other work that we do over on the Peak of Serenity, you can do that over at Peak of Serenity at patreon.com/Peak of Serenity. And as always, if you don't want to or aren't able to contribute to the site financially, you are more than welcome, like encouraged to come and hang out in Discord. The different lounges are just like a great place to chill with other people at the game and like the game. And there's a lot of just like good general knowledge, fun conversations in the different lounges, and of course, Brew Lounge being the exemplary best lounge, really sets the stage for the community in Peak. But that is going to be our show for today. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye.